Measurement in research. Now, measurement in research here, we are more focused on the quantitative aspect of research, not the qualitative aspect. All right, qualitative research tries to use some methods to measure, but we cannot put a metric on somebody's feelings or somebody's opinion, but we can convert some numbers. We can measure some numbers. We can measure some quantities. So when we are talking about measurement, we are looking at adding a metric, do you understand, to a certain behavior or a certain activity. So that is measurement. And when measurement comes in, then we are talking about purely a quantitative type of research. All right. And Lord Kelvin said that when you cannot measure, your knowledge is meager and unsatisfactory. So right from the topic, we should be able to know that we are able to measure, the construct in what your topic, and that's what we're going to do. So we have this other guy who also said, the same guy, I think it's Lord Kelvin, who says, when you can measure what you are speaking about and express it in numbers, then you surely know something about it. All right. When you can measure what you are speaking about and express it in numbers, then it means you know what you're talking about. So I just want to take you a little tour about science, okay? And this just to give you a background of what we are talking about. Now, we say that science involves the collection of information, and science helps us to observe the world. And we use this information kind of figure out what has already happened, what is currently happening, and what we think in the future is going to happen. And these kind of observations we have made, we need to record them properly using some sort of records and references. And the issue of, measurement is very, very important. And we say that scientific studies generate and test theories. Scientific studies generate and test theories. So if the thing is scientific, then it means that there is some form of science behind it. Some form of verifications can be done if the thing is science. Now, I told you about what a theory is when we were talking about it the other time. We are saying that a theory is an explanation of how the world works, and it has two parts. Theory is an explanation of how the world works, and it has two parts. So theory has concepts. And what are concepts? An idea or label that classify people or things and relationships. Okay, so when we talk about theory, I told you yesterday, it's a bunch of concepts, and also it establishes what the relationship with the concept. So a theory might say that the male and female are dissimilar in terms of their features and all that, but probably their thinking relates, their cognitive abilities relate. They might say that, but theory essentially talks about what? How concepts work and how, it establishes the relationship with each other. So everything we see under the sun, from, toothpick to anything you see, there's a theory behind it. All right. These theories and concepts have been established already. So what we do is that we test them. So for example, let me give you a typical example. Now, there is a construct or a concept called religiosity, and it's classified according to which religion is essential to the way they think and what they behave. If we say somebody is religious, that's what we mean. The religiosity of somebody shows the extent to which the person is religious, okay? And we use the concept of religion to classify people into groups. So we say those who are religious will come to A, and those who are not may, be classified as B. And perhaps those who are highly vested in religion, those who are mild vested, and in that order. Maybe we want to rate them in that manner. So, for example, criminality is also a concept that classifies, people according to how they are willing to break the law. So we have religiosity and criminality. So when we use these concepts, we use them to categorize these people. And that is why a concept like supply chain classifies, some activities under supply chain. A concept like inventory management classifies. A concept like e-suite classifies something. Or you want to use a concept like somebody is doing something in project management, classifies some activities under what? Project management. It categorizes them. So perhaps we might want to divide the people into, this tendency, this high tendency. We want to know those who want to break the law and those who are unwilling. Those who want to break the law are those who maybe classify under what? The concept criminality. And those who are not willing to do that, we say they are religious. So you might want to do that. But the good thing is this. So you have something like this, where theories, I said, theories are concepts linked with what? Relationship. So I give you an example of a theory. So for example, we can theorize the degree to which someone's religiosity affect the degree to which that person is criminal. So now you see the relationship. We are classifying, for example, how someone religiosity, all right, the degree of that religiosity that can affect the degree to which that person can be what? Criminal. In other words, we can say that if somebody is highly religious, maybe that person might not be criminal. The level of criminality will come down. So if this relationship between religiosity and criminality is negative, then it means that once one becomes more religious, one becomes less what? Criminal. So if it has an inverse relationship, then if religiosity goes up, then criminality comes out. Then we say it has an inverse relationship. Okay. Then we expect that religious people to be less likely to break the law, and then the reverse is also what? True. I'm drawing your mind to something. So a theory without evidence or more than a guess, it is not what? Scientific. And the reason why when we are doing research, we need to establish the theoretical underpinnings of what we are doing. Because those concepts we have there, we need to have evidence to prove that that concept have the relationship which has been indicated that by that theory. And that's why there's this hypothesis testing and all that. So to test the theory, we need to figure out who is more or less religious and who is more or less criminal, to see whether these people are more religious or less criminal or vice versa. So the recording process of this activity is what we call measurement. Does that make sense? The recording of the fact that someone is more religious or less religious or more criminal or less criminal is what we call measurement. Are you with me?
Yes, Doc.
Yes.
Okay. And this is very important for those of you. I see Prof Moses. This is very important. I know why, because what you're doing is purely quantitative. Okay. So just drawing your attention to that. Idris will the same thing. And then some of you are Dovia. Yeah, Dovia is also doing something purely quantitative. So we are saying that a theory without evidence or more than a guess is not scientific. So if you are using a theory, then that theory should be tested. So the recording of the process of figuring out which of the concepts behave in a certain manner is what we call measurement. So when I mean measurement in research, I only mean that we are recording what? The attributes of certain events. So when we measure, we keep records of our research subjects, thoughts, behaviors, and personal characteristics. That's what we call measurement. So we use these records to help us look for relationship between those measurements to see if the relationship exists. So in research, in theories, when we are testing them, it is the relationship we want to establish to see whether they exist or not. So in particular example, developing a measurement scheme in figuring out a way to determine whether or not someone is more or less religious or more or less criminal. Okay, so how can we do this? So see what we have done. We have religion, we have criminality. So what do we put there? You can use maybe survey to do that. And you can ask a question because you want to measure that are you religious or are you criminal? In this wise, they will say yes or no, right? That's what they will say. The other people will also ask a question. How often do you attend maybe religious service? They just want to deduce. And then he will say, how often have you been arrested? Just to know the extent to which one becomes what? Criminal. So we have a lot of strategies to do that. These strategies have their own weaknesses. And I just want to draw your attention, to that. So in this particular example, developing a measurement scheme in figuring out to determine whether someone is more religious or less religious now becomes what? An issue. Okay, so we are saying that we might also want to use different methods of collecting data. And we might want to visit a religious, prone area and might start discussion with them on the subject of religiosity and criminality. We could take a detailed or extensive notes from a form or a good picture to establish the complexity of it. But in all this, we just want to measure. And I want you to appreciate the essence of measurement. But it is a bit difficult for someone else to check our work. And they may be willing or they may be lingering questions as to whether what we saw our subject as they were is what really represents what we want to reflect. It means there will be, some people will be judgmental. They will be more opinionated, okay? And that becomes what? A problem. So whether we are talking about survey questions or quantitative research or note-taking strategies in qualitative research, researchers have to figure out how they will take information about what they observe and how they put them into records. The putting of those information into records is what we call what? Measurement. Okay, it's what we classify as measurement. So, and let me tell you, that is not simple. All that I'm talking about is for you to have that background. Measurement is not what? Easy. Okay, and that is why in research, most times, even when you are asking questions, you want to leverage on some questionnaire that has been what? Used already. You have to leverage on somebody's questionnaire and then replicate the same because those ones have been what? Tested. So often when students get research project, they think they have a pretty good handle on the questions they want to ask. And they start drafting questions to start collecting what? Data. You cannot draft questions. You cannot. The study that you are doing, somebody might have done the same study. Because when you draft your own questions, what you have to do is you have to empanel some experts and take them through for them to check the questions, the wording and all that, and then do some sort of a reliability test to see. Okay, so I want to give an example. Now there's this topic. So we are talking about measurement. So I haven't talked about science and theory and practice. I want to give you a typical example. So there's a topic that somebody used in procurement, okay? And we want to use that as an example. How do we measure? Now he says assessing the effect of compliance on public procurement for delivery. That was his topic. And he said a case study of selected public institutions. Yeah, that's fine. But the key words here is what? Assessment. effect. Then we have compliance, and then public procurement delivery. These are concepts. And these concepts belong to a certain theory. So if I'm going to use these concepts, then I need to know which theory this concept emanated. This thing is very, very important. And that is why in research, theoretical review is very important. Because I need to know where you pull this concept from. So what this? We are using assessment. We say we are doing assessment. So the first question is, what tools are you going to use to assess this? If you are doing an assessment, it's pretty more of what? A quantitative study. So which tools are you going to use to assess? And then you say the assessment is looking at what? Effect. And the question is, how do you measure effect? And I ask the question, are you going to use high, medium, low, or you're going to use excellent, good, fair, or bad, or you're going to use some percentage, 20%, 50%? I mean, how are you going to measure the effect? These are questions that we need to ask ourselves. And that brings us to the type of scales. Okay, because we need to put a scale. And if I see your topic, I should know which scale I'm using. And that should drive me to know which statistical tools to apply to the scale. Are you guys with me? Are you guys with me?
Yes, yes, Doc.
Okay. If you are with me, then let's go ahead. If you are with me, and then let's go ahead. Vivian, I'm having a class. I'll call you back. So if you are with me, then let's go back. Okay. So it brings us to scale. So we have the nominal scale, and from the nominal to ratio scale, you remember yesterday I mentioned this. It's from the lowest to the highest. So what is a nominal scale? Nominal scale talks about, it's just names of places, names of people, names of churches. These do not have any rankings. It is not in order. So for instance, in research, when you are doing demographic information like gender, male or female, that is a nominal scale. It is not ordered. If you're doing something like, for instance, religion, Christian, I mean, Muslim, okay, hedonist, they are all nominal scale. And it is the lowest, I mean, when it comes to scaling. So if you're having research and then you're doing research and you have questions, yes or no, remember that it is the lowest, okay, on the scale chart when it comes to, I mean, measurements. Then we have the ordinal scale. The ordinal scale is ranked. It is more powerful than what? The nominal scale. An example is using the Likert scale. Either excellent, very good, good, fair, poor, and whatever. Or doing strongly agree, disagree, neutral, disagree, strongly disagree. These are Likert scale. It is ordered. It is ranked. That is what? Ordinal scale. So I can look at your topic and I want to figure out, if you said you're doing the assessment, what kind of scale are you using to do the assessment? All right. And that is what yesterday I talked about, the parametric and non-parametric test, which you're going to see. Then we have the interval. The interval scale is a numeric scale. The nominal and the ordinal, they are non-numeric. And that is why yesterday I said that they fall under what? Parametric, because they don't have high statistical power. But the interval, the only difference between the interval and the ratio is that it doesn't have absolute zero. It's like Fahrenheit. That's the only difference. But other than that, they are the same. So in fact, in XVSS, it treats interval scale and ratio scale as what? Scale. That's how it calls it. Okay. But the ratio scales are also numbers that has absolute what? Zero. Interval doesn't have what? Absolute what? Zero. Okay. It goes to the negative and then it's like Fahrenheit. If you are measuring, those who are into science understand what I'm saying. Okay. So once you've come from 1, 2, 3, the scale now begins to be what? Strong. You begin to strengthen the scale. So if you are doing Like a scale, agree, disagree, and all. Then you are doing an ordinal scale, and it falls under non-parametric test. It means that the scar power is not that high, and you need to know this. But that doesn't make your research very bad anyway. So let me skip this one. So this is a typical example. And maybe you guys need this slide or when you get the video. So I now talk about data collection tools. And I talk about what the scale you're going to use and the method of data analysis. Hello, are you guys there? So, are you guys there? So this is very instructive. Okay?
Yes, please.
So I'm doing a research and I'm using textual. Textual means text, like graphic, information in graphic, information in books. It is text. It is not numbers. You're using textual data, but it's secondary data. You're not doing interview, it is there. So what you are doing is that the scale you are using is that you are creation of teams as what scales. So such thing, if maybe you want to evaluate for the past 10 years, how they have reported on health issues in Ghana, you might want to look at certain categories of what diseases, let's say diabetes, let's say, what is it, BP. How many newspapers have talked about BP? So these become teams, and you use the teams as scale. But of course, you cannot do a lot with it because the method of data analysis is more of thematic analysis or content analysis or creation of model or conceptual framework. And basically, this is what more of qualitative work. So you can do qualitative work without collecting what conducting interview or in-depth focus group. Okay, focus group of in-depth interview. You can decide not to do that. You can leverage on existing textual data, and then you can do your qualitative work. And these are the type of research that most of you do not do. You can just pick. Most of you would want to use primary data. Collecting primary data is very expensive. Okay, so for instance, you can go to the records of hospital and begin to, those who want to see the reoccurrence of certain types of disease. And the number of times they are mentioned, you just use that to create some sort of graph and then represent them and then talk about them. We call that thematic analysis. And then when you are using the content, and then there are specific methodology used for content, and which is qualitative. You are just analyzing the content in a way to tell the story. And then we have the model and the conceptual framework where you are developing models using grounded theory, okay, which will leverage on existing, secondary data or collecting, primary data from what people through interview or focus group discussion. Then we have numeric secondary data. So numeric secondary data, like you have bank financial data somewhere, or you have some data about operations somewhere, about that data about production somewhere. These are numbers. And we say they are interval and ratio scales. So these ones, the first one is more of a qualitative. That's why I said that they create what? Themes as what? Scales. So of course, we cannot say that they are not parametric, scales, because they don't fall within the scale. Remember, when we talk about scales and measurement, we are dealing purely with quantitative work. So we have interval and ratio scale for numeric secondary data. Take note of it. In that, the analysis you can do is descriptive statistics. Parametric and non-parametric analysis can also be done. All right. And then you can do t-tests, you can do ANOVA, you can do cross-call-Wallace tests, you can do regression, you can do structure equation model, that is this one, or correlation. Okay. So that is for the interval and ratio scale. These ones, you can just pick them and it's just going to give you a guide. If you're doing the open-ended questionnaire, then it's more of what? A quantitative. People are going to write text. And we are saying that it also falls under creation of themes as scales and the frequency of occurrence of certain themes. And it's still thematic analysis. Now, if you are doing in-depth interview, you can also do the creation of themes as scale, the same. These are qualitative and it follows the same, paradigm. Then you have the focus group, which also follows the same. All these ones are what qualitative, methods, okay? But if you are using close-ended questionnaire, which is the primary data, the last one, which most of you are going to do that, then you can use an ordinal, interval, or ratio scale. Why am I saying that? Maybe in the question, you would have indicated that state your salary, and the person is going to state what? Figures. So that will fall under interval or ratio scale. Or you would have said that rate this thing. Good, better, best. And it's going to be rated. It is ranked. So that is ordinal what scale. And you can still do the descriptive statistics, parametric and non-parametric tests, the same t-test, ANOVA, cross-call, Wallace test, and then correlation and all that. So you can use this as a guide to know what kind of, analysis you would want to do. With a specific, topic that you're using, okay? And you are looking at the data collection tool, the kind of data collection tool you're going to use. I skipped a certain slide and I did that for what purpose, and I want to take you there. Okay, so this one. So just as we did the mind map for the topic, you can also do mind map for data collection tools. So you ask yourself, are you going to do textual secondary data? Or are you going to do numeric secondary data, open-ended questionnaire, or close-ended questionnaire, or focus group, or in-depth interview? If you know what you are going to do using this data collection tool, or you can decide another way. If you pick about 10 articles, look at their data collection tools, and then group them under this. You would know what they use, and that should guide you to know which data collection tool to use for your analysis. Because here, you know, each data collection tool has some sort of, it falls under a scale, which also specified the kind of data analysis you are going to do. All right. So if you are using numeric data, and let's discuss this. With what we have seen right now, can you tell me with your work, what you are likely, to look at? Now, when you mention the kind of data collection, when you say questionnaire, close-ended, then we know which kind of data analysis you should be doing, okay? If you say you are doing interview, then we know in-depth interview, then we know which kind of data analysis to use. So let's talk about this. Hello. Hello. Prof. Moses, are you there? Hello.
I'm here.
Yeah. You are a senior citizen, so we have to hear from you. So, for your work, we are going to use a panel data, right?
You are right.
Okay, so how do you envisage the kind of, which tools are we going to use for the analysis? Guess on top of your head.
Numerical secondary.
Numerical secondary data. So that gives us what? I just want you to mention it. That gives us which method of data analysis?
Quantitative.
Quantitative. Okay.
Yes.
That is, yeah. Quantitative. So we are doing descriptive statistics. We are doing parametric tests. We are not going to do non-parametric because it's secondary. We are going to do correlation, regression, structural equation model. There are other models, predictive models that we can use because it's more of quantitative work. Who else? Who else? Monica. Al Hassan. Hello. Or just say something. There's no wrong or right answer.
Hello, sir.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
So
Yeah,
what?
so actually, I'll be doing my project next semester. So.
Oh, next semester. Oh, okay. Oh, so this is not the last one I thought I knew.
Hello?
Oh, okay. I get it.
Yes.
Oh, okay. This is not the last one at the presidency. I thought you were the one.
No, sir, please.
Oh, okay. All right. So, Dovia, are you there? Okay. So let's go. Let's go ahead. So we're talking about parametric and non-parametric tests. All right. Now we said assumptions about what? Parametric tests. This one, you just have to understand and apply them. We said parametric tests, the interval and the ratio scale falls under what? Parametric tests. The nominal and the ordinal scale falls under non-parametric tests. You remember, we made mention of this. So the assumptions that underlies parametric tests. The first one is it should have random independent samples. Random independent samples. In our next session, these things we are going to treat it into details where we are going to use as a scout tools. It should have interval or ratio level what? Measurement. I made mention of it. Ratio. It should be normally distributed and there should be no outliers. You see that bell shape. And it should have homogeneity of the variance. The variance is normally the mean that is deducted from the frequency when you add all together. Okay, that gives you what? The variance. All right. And when you square it, you have the standard deviation. Okay. So the variance, there should be homogeneity. When we say homogeneity, it should be similar. Okay. There should be no variation. And we say that sample size larger than minimum of any non-parametric test. The sample size is larger than minimum for any non-parametric test. That is that for what? The parametric test. Then we say parametric tests are more powerful. They are more likely to detect the difference that truly exists. So if somebody uses numeric data like that of Prof. Moses, then he will be predicting almost close to reality. And it is less likely than non-parametric tests to make what? A type 2 error. And we're going to discuss about all of this. So parametric tests and non-parametric tests, the kind of analysis you can do, independent sample t-test, paired sample t-test, one-way ANOVA, one-way repeated measures, ANOVA. And for non-parametric tests, you have the Mann-Whitney test, Wilkinson sign rank test with the cross-call, Wallace test, and Fredman's ANOVA. These are for non-parametric tests. So what it means is that for non-parametric tests, you don't have those assumptions just like parametric. Anything that is negated for non-parametric tests is what parametric test is what the non-parametric test. That is what it is. Okay. If you will not take anything home, remember that parametric test uses the scale, interval, and ratio. Non-parametric test uses what? Nominal and what? Ordinal scale. Okay. So the essence of measuring variable in a topic is to ensure high level of validity and reliability in the research work. That's the essence of measuring what? The topic. C, the essence of research, in fact, is to ensure that there's validity. Validity here is talking about the extent to which That instrument we are using to measure the data measures what it's supposed to measure, the extent to which. In other words, you have gone to the hospital and you are sick of what? I mean, malaria. And then the doctor then sees the symptoms and writes that you go to the lab so that they conduct a malaria test. Now you meet the lab technician, and who picks a typhoid kit and then draws your blood and then detects that you don't even have malaria. And then send the report back to what? The doctor. What is the doctor going to do? He's going to prescribe typhoid. Okay? Because it was that kit that was used. So maybe they diagnose you of typhoid instead of malaria. So they will write medication for typhoid. What has happened? The instrument that was used to measure or to test that disease was a wrong instrument. So in validity in research, what we seek to do is to make sure that you have selected the right instrument and that that instrument is consistent. In other words, it's measuring what it's supposed to measure. That you cannot use typhoid kits, toolkits to test malaria or otherwise. Tell me, if that happens, what have they done to you? What have they done to you? Tell me. Hello? Are we there?
Yes.
Hey, the way you people are quiet.
Yes.
We're here. I'm
Mary,
here.
what will
Wrong
happen?
diagnosis.
Wrong diagnosis.
Yes.
Mary, you are a mechanic, engineering, how do you call it? Mechanical engineer or whatever, right? The last time you came to my house and you said that the tie,
Yes,
there was something wrong with the tie and all that. Okay, so let's assume that my car has a problem and the problem is more of electrical problem. And then I come to your shop and then you diagnose and you say that it is not an electrical problem, but it's a problem that has to do with the engine. So I should go and buy some part of the engine for you to what? Fix.
yes.
The fact of the matter is that you have asked me to buy a wrong what? Instrument. Do you understand? Or in other words, the diagnostic tool that you use in diagnosis is a bad tool. Okay?
Yeah.
Because
Yes.
it did not, or you use the wrong tool for the diagnosis. So when it comes to research, what is the tool that the instrument we use? The data collection instrument can be interview guide, questionnaire, you understand? In-depth interview, observation, they are all what? Data collection, what? Tools. And most times, when you are doing your research, you are doing a quantitative study, and yet you are doing interviews. So you are you have acted like the lab technician who have used a wrong instrument to diagnose someone. Because you are doing a quantitative study. So you are either using a secondary data or close-ended questionnaire. But you said that you did interview. But interview, that tool is for qualitative. It is not for quantitative. So in research, what we seek to do at the end of the day, the panel who will meet you, all that they want to ensure is that the instrument you use in collecting the data is valid. And that because it's valid, it's giving you reliable what results. Now, if you have a weighing scale in your house and the weighing scale is faulty, and every day you stand on it, won't it give you a figure?
Yes.
And that figure will be wrong, but it will be consistent, right?
Yes.
The wrong will be consistent.
Yes.
So you can have an instrument which is invalid but reliable. You agree? It's invalid,
Yeah.
but the results are what? Consistent. But every valid instrument will give you reliable results. You get it? An invalid instrument can give you reliable results, but all valid instruments will give you reliable results. Okay? So that is what we do in research. So see this, developing objectives in research. I know someone will be interested in that. Developing objective in research. So when we talk about objective in research, what we seek to do, what we are seeking to do, we are setting targets for the research, like key performance indicators, which at the end of the research, we're going to use that to measure. So your objectives are always connected in your research to your conclusions in chapter 5. Anytime you want to talk about objective, it's what you are, the study is concluding to have achieved. All right. So in research, we set measurable targets, and then we establish if those targets have been what achieved. That's what we do. So let's see. So for instance, if I'm developing objectives, what's something? The topic was what? Hello? Hello?
Hello, Doc. Of numbers, how will be the maximum?
Sorry?
I have a very bad network, but I want to find out. For example, if you want to set objective, how many do you? For example, my question like this, my research topic like this. How many can you set for yourself in terms of maximum?
It depends on what you want to achieve. But at the master's and PhD level, well, the minimum should be like 3.
Okay.
The minimum should be like 3, right? But of course, that question becomes irrelevant when you have done extensive literature review. You realize that you cannot talk about number, because if you have picked the study from your topic from limitations of past research, then what you would do naturally is to do what? Go to that same research and borrow their objectives, all right? But of course, the gaps that you want to fill, you might end up probably reintroducing one other objective, or changing some part of the methodology, or changing the theory or something. So most times, people don't know, students don't know that most studies that they do, the objectives are already, those targets have been set by other people, but they could not meet them. And those things, those areas became what the limitation of the study, for which reason you are doing the same study. So you can now set those same objectives and this time achieve it, because they said they couldn't achieve it. So where students have to sit down and crack their brain for objective, I wonder why they have to do that. You don't really need to do that. Do you get what I'm saying?
Yes, Doc.
So I'm giving you a practical example. The topic we talked about is assessing the effect of compliance on public procurement delivery, a case study of something. So the key word, which is the taxonomy, is what? Assessment. You are doing what? Assessment. And this is where the measuring can come in. So if you are doing an assessment, we ask that in assessment, are you identifying? Are you evaluating? Are you examining? Are you determining? Are you investigating? Are you verifying? Are you applying? Are you assessing? Which of these taxonomies measure the key construct assessment? All right? Because that's what we are doing. We want to know. Okay? And another one is another key construct here is what? Compliance. So the compliance, in compliance, and this is because I'm doing procurement, that's why I'm telling you. So for each concept you have, there are other sub-variables under it. So for compliance, there is the political interference, there's a media publicity organization. This is something that has been established in theory, not from my mind. And that's why you have to do the theoretical review to see some of these constructs. They are there. Okay. Familiarity rules. So if I say compliance, which aspect of compliance am I looking at? And I give a reference, Benjamin R. something 20 what 12. That's how he expresses the meaning, the sub-variables of what compliance. And then we have this public procurement delivery. In the Act, it talks about value for money. That is Act 633, amended by 914 of 2003. It talks about value for money, accountability, transparency, and fairness. Do you realize what I'm doing? For each of these constructs that I'm picking, I'm backing it with what? Evidence to tell you where they are coming from. So now I have assessment, I have effect, I have compliance, I have public procurement for delivery. See how this then works. So all that I'm saying, the topic you choose, okay, you are doing an assessment, which means any of these variables, but identify is a weak taxonomy. So it doesn't come in. I mean, just take it from me. If you are doing research, you don't use the taxonomy at this level, identify. Identify doesn't mean you don't do any work. You can use your eyes to do it. But are we going to evaluate? Are we going to examine? Are we going to determine? So tell me, how many objectives can you get from this work? Hello? Tell me. If you break it down this way, how many objectives are you going to get? Tell me. Are you there?
Yes,
Hello?
sir.
Are you there?
Yes, sir. Several.
Several.
All right. How many objectives are you going to get?
I'm gonna get a lot.
So you realize that if I'm even using this, I can say the first objective is to assess the effect of political interference on value for money. So what have I done? I maintain only this construct. For public procurement delivery, I maintain only what? Value for what? Money. Watch how it spans out. And then second, I use another taxonomy. Examine the effect of media publicity on value for money. So now value for money becomes what? Constant at the end. I can juggle it anyway, but it depends on how the literature, what the literature is also saying. The third one, evaluate the effect of professionalism, which is a compliance what variable on value for money. All right. Do you get the whole thing? You can also decide to use, I mean, other variable like perceived rules, legitimacy, or social influence. And you can talk about accountability, not value for money. You can talk about transparency, not value for money. You can talk about fairness, not value for money. It all depends which direction the research is going. All right. So that is about establishing what? Objectives. I don't know if you have any questions. Let me open up for discussion because I'm going to do this part and then the developing of research questions, and then we draw the curtains down for today. Do you have any questions? People are having difficulty with the internet. They keep falling off. Any questions? Hello?
Hi.
Any questions?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so let's look at what? Developing research questions. When we are developing research questions, we said that this seeks to answer to achieve the objectives. The research questions, the primary aim is to what? Achieve the objectives. Each objective can have one or two research questions, and in that order. And the rule of thumb is that always align your questions to your objective. And what does it do? In the research questions, we ask the questions, okay, that help us to know which data collection to use. So we say we ask the question using data collection tools. But what does the question achieves? The research questions normally is answered when we get to what? Our chapter 4, where we are discussing our findings. Because you ask a question and the findings is giving you the answer. So just as the objective is to the conclusions, the research question or hypothesis is to what? The findings. Does that make sense? Does that make sense? The research questions is to the findings. Because in research, what did you do? There was a gap, you identify a gap, you develop a problem statement, you set targets to achieve, you ask questions. So if those questions are answered, then you come to your chapter 4, and then you bring the question, and then you tell us which answers were given, and then you discuss it in line with what the existing literature that you review, whether it confirms the literature or it rejects it. All right? It confirms it or it rejects it. So that's what we do here. Now, the interesting thing here is this. And this is also, a getaway. Now, there are 3 broad areas in research design, which is what? Exploratory, you remember, quantitative, descriptive, quantitative or mixed study, and then explanatory, which is what? Quantitative approach. We are saying that the exploratory asks the question, what? Because we don't know. We want to explore. The descriptive asks what and how. If the descriptive asks what and how, then we are doing a mixed study approach. But if the descriptive talks about how, then we are doing only the quantitative aspect of it, which I discussed the other time. So if it is what and how, then there's a qualitative part and the quantitative what part. And then the last one asks the question, why? And that is the explanatory study. And that's the high end. Why? You want to know why there exists some sort of relationship, why there exists some sort of what causality. So the same questions that we ask, the objective that we ask, we can ask these what questions. What is the effect of political interference on value for money? How has media publicity affected the value for money? That's the same thing I did. And then what? Why the effect of professionalism on value for money? So qualitative for the first one, exploratory. The second one, what? Descriptive. And the third one, what? Explanatory. All right. And this one is the broad categories of asking questions. Okay. Just for you to know that when you want to explore, you want to find out what is there. Under it, there are sub variables that you ask questions under what. So for instance, if in your research you are saying that you want to understand, then it falls under what? The first category, because you are also asking what. So you see an objective or a research question, I want to understand a phenomenon. I want to explore. So you see these keywords, it's all asking about what. All right. Then when you come to how, you see some studies that talks about both explore, do you understand, and measure, explore, and also assess to what extent. Where it's talking about effect, where it's talking about evaluate, where it's talking about investigate. It is all under what? The how. The how is the broad term. All right. How this thing was done. And then when you come to why, that is where you ask very, very high end what question, where you say that this one predicts that, or that one predicts, maybe you say that professionalism predict value for money. You understand? You are telling us how that is done. So this broad 3 categories help us in addressing these 3 research design that is broadly described as what? Exploratory, descriptive, and what? Explanatory. And we will get into details of that. And this is the broad categorization of how these things are done. Okay. So what have we done today? We've been able to talk about measurements. All right. We've dealt with the scales, the nominal scale, the ordinal scale, the interval scale. We've been able to also establish what kind of data collection tool that we would use and how this data collection tool will be analyzed. And that is I think that's the biggest takeaway. So that when you are doing your research, you understand some of these factors. Okay. So now you know that when you're using textual data, you are textual secondary data. You are more or less looking at content analysis and thematic analysis. When you are doing secondary numeric data, then you're going to do this high-end parametric text like t-test, ANOVA, regression, structural equation model, etc., etc. Okay, if you are doing a purely interview or focus group, then you are still creating themes. You want to create model. It's not more of what it's not quantitative. It's purely qualitative what research. Okay, and then if you're using, questionnaire, close-ended questionnaire that more or less uses more of Likert scale questions, then it means that you're going to use non-parametric what test, because Likert scale, which is ordinal, falls under non-parametric what test. Okay, but if it's a combination of that one and the numeric data, then you are doing both parametric and non-parametric. So there's some aspect of the work that will look at the Likert scale aspect, which falls under the non-parametric, and then an aspect which is pure data, numeric data, that will fall under the parametric test. So it could be a combination of the two. We've talked about that, and that's very instructive. And then I've also demonstrated to you, how some of these, concepts are drilled down. I've given you an example of a topic in procurement and how you can drill some of these things down. So for each construct you have, please, if you go to Google image and then you type that construct, you see if it's a theory, you see where it belongs. They'll give you a lot of images. Okay, and then you see the other construct under them. And then they'll tell you who propounded that theory. That guides you. But what we do today is that we pick a big construct, a big concept, and want to use that same concept in research. Then we are just overloading ourselves. And let me conclude by saying that in research, we just want to add something little to the body of what knowledge. We are not solving the whole world's what problem. Somebody did a study. You know what he did? A PhD work. He collected all PhD works that has been done for the past 10 years. He went on a site and downloaded everything and then did a simple descriptive statistics to show that for the 10 years PhDs that have been done over them, there are maybe 20% address a topic about in IT, another 10% did something in humanities, another one did something in psychology, another one did something in this, and then he proffered all the findings they got, reported that PhD is done. He was done, that was it. Basic research. Why? Because he was able to tell us the trend of what PhD thesis. So he has added something to the existing body of knowledge. Maybe your work, what do you be adding to the existing body of knowledge? Is there the difference in the population you added? The guy did 100 and you are doing 300. Or is there the change of what the research design? Is the same thing. He did exploratory. You want to do what? More of an explanatory. He did quantitative. You are doing qualitative. Or he did quantitative. You are doing quantitative. But the literature review is the same. You are reviewing the same literature. In fact, if you look at purely research, if you have a current publication, which is 2021 today, if you look at the publication, whoever reviewed might have reviewed from a certain year up to the 2020, and he has added his as 2021. what you are doing is not rocket science. You are also reviewing that same work he has reviewed and review his as part of it. And then you also add yours. We are building blocks. And that is why reviewing literature is very important, because you need to demonstrate to your readers that over the past 10 years, this is what has been studied, so that they know that you are well read, you understand the topic, you know the intricacies in there. But you don't just start work and then quote some literature that was done 5 years ago to tell us that within this 5 years, nothing has happened. A lot might have happened. And that's why we tell you that get current literature when you are doing your research. I think some of you on the platform have told you that one of the things that you should be very disciplined doing is that you have to ensure that every day you read an article. Now, as you see me like this, I do this every day. Maybe you might not be able to do it every day. Why don't you do it every 3 days? You are reading one article. Okay. And beyond this, I'm going to train you how to use Mendeley, to do analysis. And let me show you how this works so that I draw the curtains down for today. Okay. Let me show you how this works. And if you have any question, you can ask, and then we draw the curtains down. So this can help you in doing your literature review. I'm going to help you set. So it is Mendeley. You download online. Okay. This is the download file. I think what I can do is I can upload it. Open file location. I can upload it and share on the screen. Share on the platform so that you guys can have access to it. Okay, that is Mendeley. So I'll do that later. So let's see Mendeley. Now, so this is what I've done, and it's so exciting, eh? This is what I've done. So it's loading. Let me decline on go. Let me close this. So it's going to load. And it is online. You need internet to work with this application. Okay, it's here. So that is it. You can open it wherever you want. So this is Mendeley. So I have all the papers I'm writing. I've uploaded it here. Okay. So there's this one on employee's voice. Okay. So for instance, let me go to Microsoft Word and show you something that's going to blow your mind. So if I'm doing this study and I make reference to any of these papers, please, what do you see on the screen?
Word.
Word, good. So, I have Mendeley here. So let's say I want to reference, okay, this work. These guys, their work, right? And that's their name. So the topic is what? The Omran alarm theories of social something. So I'm going to copy this. Just want you to appreciate this. So they have said something here, maybe in their work, that excites me, and for which reason I want to reference their work. Maybe what they said was here. Okay, let me see. Something that has not been referenced. So it said that the article discusses the state. Okay, this discussion is seen, blah, 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 blah. I'm looking at something that is more so they say something here. Maybe besides IBN, use empirical methods in this study. The methodologies are observation, blah, blah, blah. So maybe I want to use observation and order. So I'm using, I've paraphrased this one and I want to reference it. Okay. So I go to Microsoft Word. Let me do it in a manner so that you appreciate it. So let me copy this one first. So this is what the guy says. All right. So instead of, he said, besides this guy used this method in the study. Okay. And these methodologies are observation. So I want to say that I'm paraphrasing it. Okay. The study, let me make it big so that the study used observation, and historical method. But I want to, he used this. So what is the basis? So I want to reference this. So watch how Mendele does it. The guy's work, the topic is here. Let me go there. I'm just going to copy either the author or the topic. I just want you to appreciate this. So that you don't kill yourself. So when I come to references, because Mendele, when you install, it has a relationship with Word, which you will configure. I'm going to teach you how to do this. You can use this thing and life will be easy. So you see, insert citation. So I put the cursor here, and then I come here and I insert citation. But I've copied that part, okay? Oman, whatever, and I pasted it here. So it brings what? That particular article. It didn't bring all. Let me delete. Okay, so there's the article. So it brings this one. Then I click OK. Watch what happens. It inserts it for me. And then at the end of the study, okay, when I'm doing my references, watch something. I can go to the reference. I can go to the reference and go to insert what? Bibliography. Have you seen it? It brings the reference.
So, sir, another reference, like you copied, how you copied? You just pasted it there because I didn't get that portion.
So what I did was this. What I did was this. Okay, what I did was this. I went in this one. I opened it Mendele because I wanted the topic. Okay, yeah. So to pull it, I would have even instead decided not to look at the topic. Okay, and use the name here. But maybe he has written more than one paper that I've uploaded. So I might be wrong, but I use this one, okay? This one to search for this paper to reference. So I copy this, but if you know the paper, you don't have any problem. And I come to Word, then this is where I want to put it. So I'm saying that the study use observation, comparison, and historical method. Who use it? These people use it. So I want to reference them, right? Okay. So I come here and I say insert. Then I'm going to paste what I copied. So it brings this one. You understand? It brings that paper here. And I click on it. And even if you want to reference two papers, okay, let's say I want to reference two papers and there's another paper. It talks about poverty. You see, all those papers are here. I can add it. Watch what happens. It references two papers for you. Wow. And then add it to this one. Amazing.
Automatically. Oh.
Hello.
I say we are there.
Hello, Doc.
Life can be easy.
Wow.
Very, very easy. Very, very easy.
that is if you know what you're doing.
So by the time you finish your work, the references are done. It's arranged.
So, Doc, any article that you work with, you have to add it to Mendeley. Is that
You have
correct?
to add it to Mendeley. So it's here. And interestingly, Mendeley over time, also anytime there's a new publication, they send it to you once you subscribe.
Oh, okay.
Okay?
Okay.
So that's how life can be. So I want to thank you for your time.